She's in the ground. So there's...
Who is it?
My mom!
The man standing in the doorway has no idea his entire life is about to collapse. Moments ago, officers told him something no husband is ever prepared to hear. His wife, 55-year-old Brenda Powell, has been brutally attacked in their home. What he hasn't learned yet, what the detectives are slowly preparing him for, is the part that will destroy him forever. The person responsible isn't a stranger, a burglar, or an intruder. It's his daughter. The nightmare began on the evening of March 3, 2020, when Akron, Ohio police rushed to the Powell residence after receiving a frantic 911 call. The caller was a college professor from Mount Union University, someone who wasn't even at the scene, but he knew something was terribly wrong. Moments earlier, Brenda had been on the phone with him discussing her daughter Sydney's academic situation. Sydney had recently been struggling in school, and administrators were trying to reach her parents. As Brenda spoke, the professor suddenly heard a scream, a loud, sharp cry, followed by chaos. Then the call abruptly ended. Police arrived within minutes. Because they were responding to a scream call and a suspected violent disturbance, they had the legal authority to enter immediately. The front door was unlocked. The house was eerily quiet. And then, as officers turned the corner into the kitchen, the scene erupted into view. Blood streaked the floor. A knife lay inches from a woman's head. A cast-iron skillet covered in blood rested nearby. Brenda was on the ground, barely conscious, her body torn by over 30 stab wounds, primarily to the neck. It was clear she had been in a violent struggle for her life. And standing in the middle of this carnage was 20-year-old Sydney Powell, trembling, crying, and covered in blood. "Where's your mom?" the officers asked. She's right there," Sydney stammered. "There was someone in the house. He broke in. He hurt her. I tried to help." Her story was panicked, scattered, and filled with contradictions. She said she heard a bang. Then she said she heard screaming. She said an intruder smashed the back window to enter the house, but officers noticed something strange. The shattered glass wasn't inside the house. It was outside, with blood dripping down the exterior frame. This meant the window was broken after the stabbing, not before. The scene was staged. As paramedics prepared to transport Brenda, who was fighting for her life, Sydney's behavior grew more frantic. She cried uncontrollably. She clutched her injured hand but insisted she wasn't hurt. Officers noted her cuts were shallow, likely defensive wounds from holding the knife, not injuries from an intruder. Then Sydney's father, Steve Powell, arrived. The moment he stepped inside, Sydney collapsed into sobs. She couldn't look at him. She couldn't speak coherently. Steve tried to comfort her, not yet realizing that she wasn't just a traumatized witness. She was the primary suspect. Police secured the home and searched the property. The broken window didn't match Sydney's claims. The blood patterns were inconsistent with a struggle involving two people. There was no sign of forced entry anywhere in the house. The only person who could have committed this act was someone already inside the home. While Brenda fought for her life at the hospital, detectives transported Steve and Sydney separately to the station. Steve waited anxiously in a small interview room, unaware that the truth about his daughter was about to break him. Meanwhile, detectives began piecing together a motive through interviews with Sydney's friends and the college itself. What they discovered was a web of lies Sydney had spun for weeks. Sydney had been kicked out of college due to failing grades. She hadn't attended classes in weeks. She was overwhelmed, ashamed, and terrified of disappointing her parents, especially her mother, who she was extremely close to. Friends described Sydney as anxious, sensitive, and struggling under the pressure of not knowing what she wanted to do with her life. But instead of asking for help, Sydney told her parents everything was fine. She lied about attending classes. She lied about her grades. She lied about upcoming assignments. And when the college attempted to notify her parents, Sydney intercepted calls, deleted messages, and tried everything to stop them from discovering the truth. On March 3rd, Sydney's lies finally collapsed. Her professor managed to reach Brenda directly. And when Brenda heard the truth that Sydney was not attending classes, that she had been removed from the university, everything erupted. Detectives believe the argument escalated quickly. Sydney, overwhelmed by fear and shame, grabbed the nearest object, a cast-iron skillet, and struck her mother repeatedly in the head. When Brenda tried to fight back, Sydney attacked her with a kitchen knife, stabbing her over and over again. The brutality was personal, close, emotional, Afterwards, Sydney attempted to hide what she had done. She called Brenda's professor back, pretending to be her mother. She staged the broken window to support a home invasion narrative. She smeared blood to make it look like a struggle. But despite all of this, she made mistakes. Many mistakes. And her story completely fell apart. Back at the station, Steve sat across from detectives as they prepared to deliver the news no father should ever hear. "Your wife didn't make it," they said softly. Steve shattered, his body shaking, his voice cracking as he processed the words. He asked about Sydney. He begged to know what was happening. But detectives had to tell him the next part, the part that would change him forever. "We don't believe anyone broke into your home. We believe Sydney did this." Steve's face went blank. Confusion, shock, denial. "This is not possible," he whispered. No. His son, waiting outside, didn't know yet. Steve asked officers to let him break the news himself. When he told his son, both collapsed into tears. "Your sister, they think she did this. She's going to jail forever. Mom's gone." For detectives, this wasn't just a homicide case. It was the destruction of an entire family. Despite claiming she blacked out, Sydney Powell was arrested and charged with her mother's murder. At trial, she pleaded insanity, insisting she didn't remember the attack and never meant to hurt her mother. But the brutality of the crime, the staged break-in, and the phone impersonation made the jury doubtful. She was found guilty on all counts: murder, felonious assault, and evidence tampering, and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Brenda Powell lost her life to the very person she loved most. Steve Powell lost his wife and effectively his daughter in one night. One moment of panic, shame, and emotional collapse destroyed an entire family. And to this day, the case remains one of the most heartbreaking examples of how a young woman's fear of disappointing her parents turned into a tragedy no one saw coming. If this story moved you, remember behind every statistic is a human being who once laughed, loved, and dreamed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that uncover the darkest sides of human nature and the lessons they leave behind. This is True Crime and Scam Stories, where every story has a heartbeat.